Hey, welcome everybody. Happy Monday afternoon. It's been a while since I did one of these on Monday, hasn't it? Guys, I'm deaf again today. You can see I don't got the headphones in, so we're just going with it. Let me get this music turned down just a tad. That's probably fine. Hope you guys are well today, and I'm looking forward to jumping into some sermon prep. Like I said, it's been a minute since I did this on a Monday, and trying to set myself up for success this week, right? I'm not wasting any time. This week. We're jumping right in. Now, the first thing I want to do is get my roadmap coordinated because I'm on my last week of my roadmap. That does not bode well. When you're on your roadmap and you're like, wait a second, I'm on the very last Sunday, it's not much of a roadmap anymore because, everything after that is winging it. So, gotta get the roadmap updated, all right? So, this is good to start, but we're going to duplicate some notes document and try to dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. Monday afternoon, evening, and I got my LaCroix. I know I haven't been drinking tea. Guys, it's hard in this setup. It's hard in this room to get the tea going regularly. We're still on limoncello LaCroix. We'll get upgraded, all right? It's just about patience. It's all about patience. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. And I'm just excited to be on here streaming, get my sermon prep going early in the week. I like to feel prepared. I don't like to be scrambling. I'm not as dogmatic about preparation as some, okay? I can go with the flow, but hey, good roadmap is helpful, all right? That's all I'm saying. Is the good roadmap is helpful. Let me just look at audio levels look good. It's clean. And cheers. Man, I love the limoncello. Yes. Lemon cream soda. That's what it is. It's lemon cream soda with no sugar, no nothing. I don't know how they do it. It can't be good for you, right? They have to. There has to be like poison in here or something. How are you going to get me 0 calories, 0 fat, 0 sodium, 0 carbs, 0 proteins, and it tastes like lemon cream soda? How are you going to do that? It's magic. I don't know if you read the Bible. Not so hot on magic. Okay, just saying. Not saying, just saying. All right. Let us finish off the roadmap. I had previously planned to preach Hebrews 13, 9-13 all together. So let's make sure this has a common theme, and if it does, good, and we'll establish the rest of the roadmap. It says this: do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them. This is a little indication that these are the teachings he's referring to, right? Teachings about foods and all that stuff. We have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp. Interesting. So he's taking the eating theme and tying it now to sacrifices. So Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. A lot going on here, y'all. A lot. Whoa. What was I thinking taking so many verses? I clearly wasn't thinking. Why didn't you guys tell me not to do this? I'm sure I set this up with my internet handlers right there, ready to pounce and correct me for such a foolish mistake, and yet you guys did not. I am disappointed and frustrated with the fact that you did not come in and correct me on this. Very, very discouraging. But what are you going to do? I got to keep pressing on. All right, so we got our Hebrew, we got our English, we got our Greek. Good to go. Now let's try to build the rest of the roadmap. I do think this all goes together. Yeah, it all goes together. Like I could see separating verse 9 out, but even a comment in verse 9 does go with the rest because he's talking about foods, and that's what ties him into this. So I think it all goes together. We'll roll with it. I can't be bothered. Let's continue. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Man, these are such one-offs. 14 and 15 might go together, but does 16 fit? I don't even know. Obey your leaders and submit to them. Okay, that one's different. Keeping watch, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Pray for us, for we are sure that we have a clear conscience, desiring to act honorably in all things. I urge you the more earnestly to do this in order that I may be restored to you the sooner. So 18 and 19 go together. So let's just throw that down here somewhere. Hebrews 13, 18 to 19. I'll call it, I don't know, practical prayers. Practical prayers seems fine. This is already labeled benediction, so we'll do that another time. 17 probably goes by itself. Yeah, it certainly doesn't go with 16, and it doesn't go with 18. So 17 goes by itself. Hebrews 13, 17. Leadership and obedience. This will be different enough from imitate me as I imitate Christ. Now we have to decide on 14 to 16. Are they all one? For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good, to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Sacrifices are in both. 15 and 16 go together. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good, to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. 15 and 16 go together by virtue of sacrifices. The only question then is 14, does 14 go with them? No, I don't think so. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. I think we've got it right here. Hebrews 13:14. City to come. Then Hebrews 13:15 to 16. Sacrifice of praise. Then the benediction. Now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight. Through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Hebrews 13 to 20 to 21, benediction. We're just cruising, y'all. All right, final greetings. We're down to the last 4 verses. I appeal to you, brothers, bear with my word of exhortation, for I've written to you briefly. You should know that our brother Timothy has been released, with whom I shall see you if he comes. Greet all your leaders and all the saints. Those who come from Italy send you greetings. Grace be with all of you. Yep, that'll just be a conclusion. Hebrews 13, 22 to 25. Concluding remarks. All right. I mean, that's a decent roadmap. We're still a ways out. Still have another 6 weeks in this book. And you thought I was going to be done. Come on. 7 weeks. All right, we're good. People think it's taken too long. I will take my sweet time. Now the question is, what am I going to do next? Is it going to be the Gospel of John? I think it will be. But do I do it right away? Do I jump to John right away, or do I do like an intermediate book or concept? These are questions worth asking. Inquiring minds want to know. But I don't know. Just put a question mark for now. Boom. Roadmap updated through middle of August. Seems fine. Let's go ahead and move on now to this week's text. Woo, it's a doozy. Man, what am I going to do with this? Do not be led astray by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them. We have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp. So Jesus, we have an altar. This is so strange. So Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Therefore, let us go outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. Very interesting. What's up, Christian Media and Tech? Happy Monday. How are you? Yes, welcome. Christian Media and Tech says, wanting to know if you should go straight to John from Hebrews or have a break with another book of concept. That's exactly the question. Yes, Christian Media and Tech. What is your take? What is your take? Fat and fancy, how are you? Likewise, fancy and fat, just how I prefer it. Thank you. Thank you for asking, Christian Media Tech. That is what I'm trying to figure out. Should I go straight to John or should I stop and do something intermediate? What do you think? What are your thoughts? I'm pretty sure I want to do the Gospel of John next, but I've been taking a pattern of Old Testament, New Testament, Old Testament, New Testament. But in Hebrews, we spent a lot of time in the Old Testament because I went through and I preached through the Hall of Fame of Faith. I preached each of those narratives individually. So each narrative, like when it talked about Abraham for a verse or two, I ran all the way to Abraham, right? So, don't know. That feels like I treated the Old Testament absolutely sufficiently. And if that's the case, then should I go to Old Testament again? I'm not sure. Christian Media and Tech, if you've gone all the way through a book like Hebrews, it might be helpful to find something to break the monotony, but also bridges the concepts between the two books. Brilliant. I'm gonna write that down in the roadmap. Duplicate. Roadmap. Boop. Break monotony and bridge books. What's up, Bruce? Going great. How are you? Welcome. I hope you are doing well. Good to see you. Yeah, that's a good point. Christian Media and Tech, we will check it out. Doing pretty good. All right. I'm glad to hear it. Happy Monday afternoon. Yes, indeed. All right, let's read the text again. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them. We have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp. Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. I think I'm getting it now. So the logic is something like this. Beware strange teachings like eating or not eating certain foods, they don't benefit you. What kind of pastor are you? I am a Baptist pastor. I am the lead pastor of First Baptist Church of Leadville. I have been for 4 years. Thanks for asking. Gotta love that limoncello. Okay, so that's the first logical thing. Then he says this. Something like we feast. Man, it's something like we feast on Christ a food that is not to be found by the priests. And then he makes this comment. He appeals back to the Old Testament law. Old Testament law says that animals sacrificed are not eaten, but instead burned outside the camp. So too Jesus suffered outside the gate. Therefore, we must go outside the gate to participate in Jesus. Bruce says, okay, cool, thanks. So many people on here can get so cagey about their denomination or belief background, it can be hard to know where they are coming from. Hey, I understand that, and that's just the realm of religion, man. People get fired up. I want you to know, Bruce, I'm pretty open-minded, especially for a Baptist. We're not well known for being open-minded. I'll say it as I see it, right? So if you have any questions, comments, or if you're of a different persuasion, sounds cool. Yeah, you're more than welcome here. So happy to chat and have a dialogue. But yes, you're absolutely correct. And I've seen it time and time again where you're right. People get pretty fired up about their religion. And I understand it, I guess. But still, it's not always the most encouraging. This is interesting logic here. Man, maybe I separate this one out and I just teach on this. Thanks, I appreciate it. I am an atheist. I actually was an atheist in high school. I was an atheist in high school. I had a really good biology professor, and I loved his teachings, and we learned about evolution and all that type of stuff. Really made a lot of sense to me. And it wasn't until college that I kind of flipped. In college, I started reading the Bible, and the Bible made a lot of sense to me. And so that's when I kind of flipped from my atheism to Christianity. It was in college. So I can absolutely appreciate atheism. I understand it. It's obviously not where I'm coming from now as a Baptist pastor, but I can understand how somebody would be there. Yeah, very cool. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Happy to oblige. Man, I almost want to preach verse 9 on its own. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited those devoted to them. So here's I could preach a sermon on what are diverse and strange teachings. I could preach a sermon on that. Then I could tie into, we have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. It's logically connected by virtue of food, but other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, was creationism your main objection that you had to overcome? I am actually going to be honest. Once I started to learn about creationism, that made sense to me. I was in a geology class, and they were talking about millions of years and the different sedimentary and metamorphic layers and all this type of stuff. And I was struggling to see how it all fit together. And then I had a coworker who was a geologist who was actually a Christian. And he gave me some creationism stuff. And I read and listened to it, and it made a lot of sense to me. And so I actually converted to Christianity through the fruits of creationism. So it wasn't a stumbling block to me. In fact, it was enlightening to me. I will say these days, I'm not nearly as hardcore on creationism. I think that you can essentially remain neutral on the topic of the age of the earth and even evolution to a degree. I think you can kind of remain neutral on that stuff and still consider Christianity. I think the kinds of questions the Bible is trying to answer aren't at all the kinds of questions that, creationists often purport, right? So I've softened on that approach, but man, early on, it was a big deal for me. I really enjoyed digging into creationism versus evolution, all that type of stuff. But I've really softened on it a lot. Frankly, I think it's a red herring, honestly. These days, I think it's a red herring. It's a distraction from the real issues. So, yeah, interesting. I've really evolved in my approach to that topic. So, yeah, different strokes, different folks, I suppose. Different people are compelled by different things, but I've changed my stance on that. Guys, I've already decided. I'm going to preach on verse 9 by itself. Why should I smash that verse into these other verses when I haven't been setting that precedence and it's teaching a completely different topic? Huh? Why should I do that? I don't think I should. Boop, 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 boop. All right. Yeah, I hear you. I think the age of the earth is a goofy thing people can get hung up on even within the church. Agreed 100%. Like, I just think Christian, not Christian, whatever, we don't have that much information. There's just a lot of things we don't know. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things we don't know. What's up, Jay Harris? Old Testament categories are not ours. I like that. I think that's a good point, Jay Harris. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you. Happy Monday afternoon. That's right. Old Testament categories are not our categories. And so oftentimes we try to answer questions with the Old Testament that the Old Testament was never intending for us to answer, right? So, yeah, I think that's a really good point. Thank you, Jay Harris. Yes. Love to see it. All right, Hebrews 13:9, and I'm going to change this one to 10 to 13. 10 to 13, boom, better sacrifice. And then this will be Hebrews 13:9. Strange teachings that do not benefit. And I'm already thinking there are verses like, there are verses that talk about having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. Boom. There are verses that talk about that. Whoa! Whoa, Poncho! What are you doing? Oh, come on. Yes. Mr. Poncho with the support. I appreciate you, Mr. Poncho. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate all your love and support. I think we got the teacups on there. It looks like you got the teacup. We're not drinking tea today, but usually we drink tea. Thank you so much for all the love and support, Mr. Poncho. Yes. Love to see it. Thank you. And we also got Hagiophilo. Hope I said that right. It looks like a play on a couple words I'm familiar with, so that's pretty cool. Good to see you, Hagiophilo. Hi, Pastor Tanner. God bless you. God bless you as well. Thanks for swinging by the channel. Happy Monday afternoon. I hope you're doing well. We got Fighter. Hey, hey, hey. What is up, Fighter? Happy Monday afternoon. I hope you are doing well. Good to see you all. Thanks for swinging by, guys. Thanks for swinging by. Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to pivot and just preach a single verse. Hebrews 13:9. Strange teachings that do not benefit, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. Now I'm going to get rid of all of this. And we're just going to preach verse 9. Okay. Verse 9 it is. What am I doing? I'm doing that. Yes. That's what I need. Verse 9 it is. Boom, boom. Here it is. And we'll erase all of that. Okay. So these are all gone. And they'll actually go into a new note. So if I share a new note, then I can throw this in there. And this will be my note on this roadmap. Better sacrifices. Yeah, that'll be good. Better sacrifices. Boom. So that's next week's note. Don't even need it right now, but it's prepared. Never hurts to be prepared. All right, roadmap done. We're locked in. Locked and loaded. We can't fail. We can't fail. We're going to win here. All right. Fighter says, doing well. How did your evangelistic sermon go? Well received. Yes, actually. Very well received, Fighter. I had multiple people on the way out tell me that was a great sermon and they haven't heard such a good sermon in a long time. I'm gonna share a little bit about this. So I used to open air preach and evangelize on my campus, and I really practiced my gospel message. And I got used to handing out gospel tracts and all this other stuff. So this is something that I'm like well versed in, okay? And for that reason, my kind of evangelistic message is a little bit old hat to me. It feels really practiced and rehearsed. And so I thought that it might not be well received because I'm going in there and preaching something that's very familiar. But people loved it, and I realized afterwards, I was talking with my wife, I wonder why it went so well and why people loved it so much. And she told me, she said, a lot of people haven't seen this side of you. A lot of people, it might be old hat to you. It might be your standard evangelical message that you give, but it wasn't to them. They haven't seen that out of you yet, and so it was really encouraging to them. And she said, yeah, I've heard you use all of those illustrations before, all of those examples, but your congregation hasn't, and so it made a big difference for them. And I think she's right. I think she's dead right, and that made a big difference for her and for me as well. So it went very well. Thanks for asking, Fighter, and we were really encouraged afterwards. So yeah, really good sermon and really good feedback from everyone. All righty. Poncho, God bless you, brother. Brought to you by the mysterious ways of God's plan. All right, perfect. Well, I'm glad you're here, Poncho. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. Appreciate it. Whoa, we got Cal Magic up in here too. Good to see you, Cal Magic. Welcome, welcome. When IRS agents are trained to detect counterfeit bills, they focus on real money and not fake, so the fake bills will stand out as being outside the norm. Good illustration for Hebrews 13:9. That's a perfect one, Cal Magic. I've heard that one before. It's an oldie but a goodie, right? And the reason is it's so impactful. It's so easy to make sense. It's very, very clear. So I like that one a lot. Thanks for sharing, Cal Magic. That'll be a perfect illustration. I got to drop it in somewhere. All right, I want to come back to Bruce Wayne's comment. I wasn't skipping around you, Bruce Wayne. It was just a little more in depth, so I want to dig into it. It says, so it sounded like you were saying that you were an atheist because of evolution, but now it sounds like you're saying that wasn't the issue. What objections to Christianity do you think were keeping you an atheist before starting to believe? Yeah, that's a really good question, Bruce. So evolution made a lot of sense to me, but I hadn't really read the Bible, if that makes sense. So I'll put it this way. I was not an informed atheist. It's not as though like I knew all of the arguments for and against, and I was adamantly in favor of evolution versus creation. I didn't know the arguments. I wasn't aware of the discussions. And so when my professor taught me, well, my high school teacher really taught me evolution and atheism, it just made sense to me, and I embraced it. But it's not as though I embraced it over against a robust Christian faith, if that makes sense. So maybe atheism is too strong to state. Maybe I was agnostic, but I still consider that atheism. I wasn't informed. And then in college, I started to read the Bible, and I heard some of those arguments, and they made a lot of sense to me. So once I started to pit evolution against the Bible won out for me. And again, in hindsight, I realized that it's not necessarily, that's not necessarily a good thing to pit one against the other, but that's what happened to me. So I hope that makes sense. I wasn't trying to mislead. I felt I was an atheist, but I just wasn't an informed one, and it wasn't about in-depth argumentation for me, if that makes sense. So great question. Bruce follows up, I ask because I hear from Christians all the time that they used to be atheists, and I'm not saying that this is how you are coming across, but when I ask them why they were atheists, it is usually because it was an unconsidered position and were closer back to backslidden Christian than what I experienced as an atheist. Okay, I wasn't a Christian before that, I'll tell you that much. Here's where I was coming from. I was actually Mormon. Here, let's go big screen. So I was actually baptized Mormon very early on in my life. By like age 8, I think it is. I was baptized Mormon. I was baptized LDS into the Mormon church. And I went to the Mormon church for, a year or two. And then I really didn't like it. Okay. And so I decided this isn't for me. I'm done going. I'm not going to participate. And all through elementary school and middle school, my Mormon friends tried to reconvert me, tried to get me to come back to Mormonism. And I was against it. I did not want to be Mormon again. And so I basically always told them, no, I'm not interested, etc. And so then in high school, once my teacher introduced us to evolution and atheism, that made way more sense to me than Mormonism ever did. So I was kind of reacting against a religion of sorts, right? I was reacting against what I knew of religion, but it was just Mormonism at the time. But I'd never actually really read the Bible or seriously considered Christianity or anything like that. And so that was my position, and that's why I felt like I was an atheist. And then when I started to read the Bible in college, that made a lot of sense to me. and it kind of flipped me. But so I think I was truly an atheist in that sense. But here's, I think, the difference between you and I, Bruce. It sounds to me that your experience as an atheist, you feel like you need it to make intellectual sense. You see what I mean? Like, it needs to make logical, intellectual sense to you, and then you'll consider adopting it. For me, I don't think intellectualism was ever the issue. I rejected Mormonism because I didn't like it for whatever reason. I can't even remember why. But I rejected Mormonism because I didn't like it. I embraced atheism and evolution because I did like it and it made sense. But then when I started reading the Bible and considered Christianity, it made more sense. But it was never like an intellectual issue, I don't think, for me. So that might be the difference there. I think I was truly an atheist, but maybe driven or motivated by different considerations. So really good question. Very helpful for me to think through this. I hope it's helpful for you to at least kind of orient yourself around me, right? So great questions. Appreciate it. All right. Beware strange teachings. Beware strange teachings. Fighter says, what were you going to college for at that time? Where did the call into ministry come? It actually came in college. I got saved my sophomore year of college, and I was actually studying in engineering, okay? So I was studying in engineering at the time, and I was, working towards my engineering degree, and then that's when I started reading the Bible, and I got saved my sophomore year of college. I actually considered dropping out of my engineering degree and going to Bible college instead. I'm so glad I didn't do that. I'm so glad I stuck with my engineering degree and finished it out. It led to my career to this day, and then I was able to get my Master's of Divinity later on. Still working on it, of course, but almost there. I was able to get that later on and was not at all hindered by the fact that I had an engineering undergrad. Yeah. All right, let's see. Hagiophilo. Hey Tanner, are you thinking about start streaming on Kicks? I'm multi-streaming right now. Is the Christian atmosphere on Kick any good? I feel like that platform's gotten a reputation for being kind of a shady platform, right? So I just wonder what the Christian scene is like on there. And the other thing is, I have a really established Twitch audience. We've been streaming on Twitch for like 2.5 years. So I feel like leaving Twitch would be bad, and they're the ones that are handcuffing us, right? Over on Twitch, they're the ones with the exclusivity contract that goes into play here in 5 days or whatever. So I feel like if I had to pick one or the other, I'd pick Twitch, and then they wouldn't let me go on Kick. So I'm not happy with that situation. I would love to multi-stream to many platforms, honestly, but I'm trying to make do with what I got, the best scenario, and I do feel like YouTube is the platform for our long-form content, our teaching and preaching, my book reviews, my Logos tutorials, etc. But I'm open-minded. So do you think Kick would be a good platform? Let me know what you think. All right, Poncho says, just looking for a mentor, a lamp in the darkness to keep me on the straight path of God's plan. What his design for me in his plan. God has a grand plan for each and every one of this. Agree 100%, Poncho. The trick is finding that one out, right? Following God's particular path for you is sometimes a very intuitive process. You have to be in tune with the Spirit. If you're not in tune with the Spirit, you'll never be on the right path. So, yeah, very, very interesting, right? Jay Harris, God's plan is a lamp, not a floodlight. Yeah, very, very good to point out. So, interesting. All right, let's see. Fighter, are you no longer going to be able to Twitch stream and keep long form on YouTube with Twitch's new terms? Is that what I understand from what you just said? No. From what I just said, Fighter, I am going to stream exclusively on Twitch starting July. So we won't be live streaming to YouTube, except for with exceptions, right? Like I might be able to do a stream that is particularly targeted towards our YouTube audience, and so I might stream only on YouTube for certain stuff. But if I'm going to be streaming to Twitch, I will be streaming exclusively on Twitch. What I mean with the long-form content, if I'm creating videos like tutorials and things like that, I'll upload those separately to YouTube. But I don't plan on going anywhere from Twitch in the near future, Fighter. We're sticking around on Twitch for a while. Lord willing, of course. We trust God for each step. Indeed, Jay Harris. In fact, God often does this in our lives, right? In our Christian walks. He gives us the next step. God does not reveal the whole thing to us. He does not say, here's where you're going to go. He gives you the next step. And you've got to show faith and faithfulness to take the next step when he shows it to you. And then he'll show you the next step after that. Each and every one of those, on and on. Yep, very good points, everyone. Appreciate it. All right, Bruce says, I grew up Southern Baptist into non-denominational. I found the promises of Scripture to need to make effort on my part to see. The more I looked into it, the more Arminian I leaned, while all my family leaned Calvinist. Man, you are informed on Christian theology, that's for sure. And trying to process our differences ran me into things like the logical problems of evil, and I couldn't resolve it. So I started to look at some of the history and evidence to start from the beginning of the belief and realized I was presupposed inerrancy because of indoctrination. That's the short version of my position/background. I mean, obviously you're well informed on this stuff, Bruce. I'm generally speaking not going to be able to tell you anything you don't already know. I hear that. I want you to know many of the things you described are not hang-ups for me, although I'm aware of them, right? So, and I understand your point on inerrancy and things like that. I have a video on where I talk about you can question Christianity without necessarily leaving the faith. That might be a ship that's already sailed for you, but let me pull that video up. You might find it helpful. I don't know. Let's see here. Give me a second. Yeah. You share, copy. You might find this video helpful, Bruce. Maybe not though. Maybe not. But you might find it helpful. Sorry for all the typos. I've got dyslexia. No problem. I was able to understand easily what you were saying, so no issues there. Okay. Don't be led astray by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace. Okay, so diverse and strange teachings contra grace. So that's the contrast we're given. And then he gives us insight into a type of diverse and strange teaching. And that is, it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods which have not benefited those devoted to them. So the diverse and strange teaching that he's particularly referring to here is foods. Eating certain foods, not eating certain foods. Okay, so foods is an aspect of the diverse and strange teachings that he's talking about here. So, if we were to write a formal proposition on this verse, it might be something like this. Because the heart can only be strengthened by grace, and that might be overstating our position. Let's see. Beware strange... Do not be led astray by diverse and strange teachings. It is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods. Okay, so I'm probably overstating it a little bit. But let's leave it for now. Pastor Tanner, thanks. I'll check it out. Yeah, no problem. And if it's not helpful, throw it away, right? I'm just trying to be helpful, and I put that video out there because of kind of deconstruction and people with certain perspectives and understandings of Christianity, right? Jay Harris, strange teaching like Mormonism. Hey, there you go, right? That's an example of one that is thrown out there. I'm going to have to, in this sermon, be able to delineate what strange teachings are, right? What strange teachings are. It's easy to start with foods here because that's what he uses. So that's absolutely one that's appropriate, but there are many other ones we could jump into, right? So I'll put it right here. Other religions, question mark? Don't know. That one might be worth talking about. Might be worth digging into. Numbers chapter 6. Isn't Numbers 6 where we get the benediction? Oh, Nazirite vow. You're right. Which one was I thinking? Numbers 4? Oh, no. The blessing is there, but it's at the very end. Nazirite vow. I might have to deal with that, right? That's a really good point, Poncho, because if we're talking about foods, there are commands in the Old Testament surrounding foods. So which is it? Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Fighter says, what about tertiary beliefs? Really good point. There are doctrines that you don't have to necessarily get right in order for you to be Christian. And oftentimes we can unhelpfully focus our attention on things like that, right? Poncho says, first action, the blessings. I'm not sure I follow. Then, oh, okay, you're typing out something in full to me. I'll wait till you're finished then. You got it, though. No problem, Fighter. I knew what you meant. Bruce says, it's actually interesting your background in Mormonism because one of the early cracks in my belief was after watching a documentary about the FLDS and seeing that they sincerely believed in a similar way that I did, while I also knew that they were wrong. Realizing later that is the outsider test of faith, but that was another thing I couldn't resolve to maintain my faith. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I've never found individual sincerity to be compelling, if that makes sense, right? So that doesn't influence me one direction or the other, the individual sincerity to the beliefs, but I could understand how that would be a crack in the armor, as you put it, right? Because once you become more exposed to differences of opinion and beliefs out there, it does kind of expand and widen your perspective. But yeah, that was never a stumbling block for me, but I could understand how it might cause you to question at the very least. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. So because the heart can only be strengthened by grace, we should avoid strange teachings. Yep. We should avoid strange teachings. And, I mean, that's a decent start. We're going to do foods for sure, but there are going to be other ones that we should do as well. So number 6, first action the blessings, then. Oh, I see. You meant then to replace. I understand now, Poncho. Number 6, first action, then blessings. First action, then blessings. I see. Yep.
I don't know why you're clapping. I'm talking about you.
Cool. Okay, good deal. Bruce says, I'll drop you a follow and swing by another time. I don't want to derail what you've got going on, but I would enjoy chatting more sometime. Well, I want you to know, Bruce, this is what I do, right?
Arrow horn butt.
Oh, come on. Come on, Cal
Bruce
Magic.
_Lil_Wayne just
Yes.
resubbed for 1 month.
Yes, much love, Cal Magic. Thank you so much for that gifted. Appreciate you so much, Cal Magic. So, yeah, I want you to know, Bruce, you're not an interruption at all. This is why I stream. I'm ADD, and I like to jump back and forth. If I didn't want to be interrupted, I would just not stream, and I would just prepare my sermons. So I want you to know you're not an interruption. I don't feel like you're in my way or anything like that. You're free to continue asking questions. But if you got something else going on, no problem. I understand completely. But I wouldn't engage. I wouldn't engage if I didn't see value in it and I didn't enjoy chatting about it, right? So I like to jump around. It's my style. Okay, I want to now run a passage guide. So we're going to run passage guide, Hebrews 13:9, and we're just trying to get a sense of what the commentaries say the diverse and strange teachings are. So let's go ahead and first see if there is a textual variant here, and there is a textual variant. Oh, it's minor. Look, it's let's see, it's parafereste in the majority of the manuscripts and the earliest manuscripts, but it's perifereste in the Textus Receptus. So do not be carried away versus do not be carried about. Very minor difference. And it looks like carried away is far and away the better reading. According to Westcott, Hort, Nestle-Aland, the full expression is do not be carried away with strange and diverse teachings. This reading has the best documentary support. The variant arose as a scribal aberration influenced by Ephesians 4:14, carried about by every wind of doctrine. Boom. But that might be a good cross-reference. Cross-reference Ephesians 4:14. Boom. And now, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. We should put that down. And I also want to put my Philip Comfort quote there. Boom, done. And let's do a search real quick. And the search is form of godliness. I am finding that my congregation increasingly loves many cross-references. They like having a lot of cross-references, so I'm including more and more cross-references in my sermon. It's impactful for them. They get to know the Bible better. And yeah, it's helpful. So I'm going to be trying to include more cross references. Dinner is ready. I just got a text. Dinner is ready anytime. How long have we been streaming? We're on 45 minutes. I got to go at least an hour, y'all. We'll probably cut it short at about an hour. So expect us to go about 15 more minutes to clock in a total of an hour. I do want to make dinner with the family. Okay. Cal Magic says, picked up a new book to read over the next couple of days. Paul's Glory Christology, Tradition and History by Carrie C. Newman. Really enjoying it. Never heard of it. I'm guessing I don't have it. You're always reading funky stuff. So I do have a Carrie Newman book, Jesus and the Restoration of Israel, a critical assessment of N.T. Wright's Jesus and the Victory of God. That lines up because it looks like he's focusing on Paul, which is, you know, the whole new perspective stuff. So it makes sense that he would lean into that in multiple titles. Logos makes it a lot easier. No doubt about that, Poncho. And honestly, because Logos makes cross-references so easy, sometimes I feel like I'm, you know, being negligent by including a lot of cross-references. But if people love it, who am I to cast doubt upon that, right? If people love it, give them the word. And if it's easy to do in Logos, that's not my fault, right? I got plenty of other things I can be doing. So I feel you, Poncho. Yeah, if you get something like the New Treasury of Scripture Knowledge, you start clicking cross-references and stuff like that, boom, you're locked in. You're locked in. Hagiophilo. Tanner, did you ever try to search using LTS tags? What were the LTS tags? I started using the new search parameters when search came out. But I don't know what the LTS tags are. I could really improve my searching, Hagiophilo. I could really improve it, and I'd make a lot more progress, right? Absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. Fighter says, can Logos anchor a second cross-reference of your notes that are already anchored to the overall chapter? Yeah, I believe so. I believe in your anchors, you just throw another one in there, right? So, let's see, where are they? I never anchor my notes because I'm lazy. But I believe if you have anchors, you can just drop another anchor in there. Lexham Survey of Theology. No. So I like the Lexham Survey of Theology, but I've never... How do you search it, Hagiophilo? I actually like this resource a lot, but I don't know how to make... I don't know how to make the most use of it. I really enjoy this resource, but how do you make the most use of it? Do you search the verses in it? So do you do like a passage search and then just make sure this is part of what you're searching? I'm very intrigued how you use this. No, actually, Bruce, I didn't respond yet. Being Baptist, I assume you lean more Calvinist. I do. But this is also a position I've softened on over the years. When I first became a Calvinist, I was extremely dogmatic, Bruce. And I'm going to be honest, these days, I think the differences between Calvinism and Arminianism are often a matter of semantics, and we're two-dimensional creatures living in a three-dimensional world, if that makes sense. And we often don't know what we're doing or what we're talking about, right? So I think it's our attempt to systematize something that can't really be systematized. And so I lean Calvinist, but I understand the Arminian position, and I don't make a big fuss about it. I'll tell you that much. But I will say my Calvinist leanings have cost me in the online space because some people do make a fuss about it. I was actually interacting with a YouTube channel with some people that I really enjoyed very much, and we were having good conversations, good interaction. But their content is partially anti-Calvinist, and we kind of had to part our separate ways, unfortunately. Hagiophilo, this is my video. Oh, it won't let you post your video. Here, let me see if I can. Let's see if I can search this. Hagiophilo. got your channel. I just subscribed. And let's go look. Videos. Lexham Survey of Theology. I'll have to check this out later. Is all of your content in Spanish? Or would I be able to understand some of it? Thanks for sharing. I got your channel pulled up here. I just subscribed. And I'll look through when I get a chance. Thanks for sharing. I could probably use the closed captions, huh? Cool. I hear you. Cage Stage Calvinists can be tough online for sure. Yep, there you go. Exactly, Bruce. Exactly. So it's pretty funny. Man, Bruce, you are radically in the in crowd of online theological discussion for somebody who's an atheist. I think that's interesting. I just make it public. Okay, cool. Thanks, Hagiophilo. All right, Cal Magic says, as physicists say, we live in a 4-dimensional reality located in a 12 to 25 dimension world. That's pretty good, too. That's pretty good. I like it. Okay. We are moving right along. Okay. Thank you, Hagiophilo. I will put that down and make sure I get a chance to watch it. I'm going to watch it offline, off stream, but I will get a chance to check it out. Cool. I'll get a chance to check it out. Appreciate you. Poncho says, if you need help with the Spanish, I can help you. I live in Mexico. That's awesome. That's one of the things I love about online ministry is we can interact from all across the world with each other. I think that's really neat. Okay. Let's dig in. I just wanted to get a sense for, let's do the study Bibles first. And I just want to get a sense of what they think about verse 9, right? So what do these things think about verse 9? What do they say to focus on? Let's grab some stuff. NIV Study Bible. And boom. Not by eating ceremonial foods. The author focuses on the foods sacrificed at the altar to again emphasize the sacrificial system had been fulfilled in Christ and was no longer a benefit. Oh. If that's the case, if he's making a reference to the Old Testament sacrificial system and the eating of foods there, then maybe I don't have warrant for splitting up verses 9 to 13. That might cause me to reconsider. Okay? See, this is why you reference other writings. Okay, that's already helpful. NIV Study Bible. So that's the real question. Is he referencing with ceremonial foods here? See, there are two ways for me to read this, okay? Here's how I read it initially. Check it. Here's how I read it initially. He brings up being strengthened by foods, and he's talking about that generally, like false teachings where somebody's like, you shouldn't eat meat, vegetarianism only, something like that. And so what he's saying, in my mind, when I first read it, he's saying, hey, don't focus on strange teachings like vegetarianism. That's not the heart being strengthened by grace. It doesn't benefit those devoted to them. Oh, by the way, when it comes to the topic of eating foods, remember the priests who ate at the altar. Well, we have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. You see what I mean? So they're related by the food aspect, but they're still different from each other. Because in verse 9, for me, he's referencing like a false teaching associated with foods, like vegetarianism or something, and then he shifts gears. But the NIV Study Bible makes it sound like he had that intention the whole time when he brought it up. Here would be my question. If his intention is to talk about the Old Testament sacrificial system, when he talks about not by foods, why on earth does he call them diverse and strange teachings? That doesn't make sense to me, right? The Old Testament is a lot of stuff, but it's not a diverse and strange teaching, is it? I do not think the author of the book of Hebrews would ever call the Old Testament diverse and strange teachings, right? I don't know about that one. I don't know about it. All right. Bruce says, I tend to try and avoid 5-pointers because they always seem to take comfort in the idea of my eternal suffering. Oof. And that's just a bad faith conversation at that point. I agree with that. Bad faith actor, not interested in conversation with them. It has very much to do with you know who my dad is energy. Yeah, I feel that. Well, I would generally say I'm still a 5-pointer these days. But again, I've softened on how dogmatic I am about it. And then I completely know what you mean, Bruce. Those spirits are out there, right? For sure, for sure. Cal Magic says, I read that there is a scholar, name escapes me, that is talking about calling theologians to create a new systematic theology with the unseen realm topics as a central point. I would be very interested in that, Cal Magic. Very interested in it. I have my own program on this. No joke. Here's one of my long-term projects. I call it systematic biblical theology, where you actually go through the Bible, you let the biblical theological themes of the Bible set the precedents, such as priest, and rather than writing a systematic theology on the attributes of God, you write a systematic theology and the categories are given to you by the Bible itself: priest, prophet, king, all that type of stuff. And I'm calling it systematic biblical theology. It's my magnum opus. I got to write that in 3 decades, but it's a thought I've had in my mind. So I am all for somebody writing a different systematic theology, especially based on the unseen realm. That sounds intriguing to me. Very, very intriguing. Yeah, if you get any more information on that, Cal Magic, definitely let me know. Cal Magic says, food is a physical solution where grace is a spiritual solution, consistent with Jesus elevating topics to a spiritual level. Agreed 100%, Cal Magic, and I think this is a very consistent theme in the book of Hebrews, right? So I am totally tracking with you on that one. Let me go ahead and put that one down. Boom. Very nice. Very nice. Bruce says, ironically, I believe more in predeterminism as an atheist than I did as a Christian. I can understand that. I can understand that. Especially if you have a behaviorist approach to reality, right? That we don't really have free will necessarily because we're conditioned by nature and nurture and our situation, etc. And especially if you think that we're just a function of all of the inputs, if that makes sense. So I can understand that approach, Bruce. Not my approach, of course, but I can understand it for sure. Patrick, hello. Very wonderful. Christ-centered sermon this past Sunday, Pastor Tanner, was a great blessing. Much love to you, Patrick. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And you are one of many who have given me very good feedback on that sermon. Praise God. Thank you so much, Patrick. You don't know how much of an encouragement that is to me. Seriously, guys, my love language is words of affirmation. I mean it. I love when somebody comes to me with meaningful, genuine words of encouragement. It makes a big difference for me. If you're just my cheerleader, I don't care so much because it's not tethered to reality, right? If you just come along and say, you can do it, right? It's like, you don't know anything about me. You don't know if I can actually do it or not. But if somebody genuinely has true words of encouragement, which I feel like are grounded in reality and informed by their opinion of observing me, it's a great encouragement to me. So thank you so much, Patrick. That means a lot. It means a lot. Thank you. Awesome. Poncho says, the unseen realm, recovering the supernatural worldview of the Bible, Michael Heiser. Yes, we love Mike Heiser here, Mr. Poncho. Cal Magic and I are big fans of Mike Heiser. So, yeah, his passing was a shame, but you know what? I thought about it, and I think he even said this himself. He did what he came here to do, if that makes sense, right? Like, he covered what he was supposed to do in his life and gave the church what he needed to give the church. And then God saw fit to call him home, right? So, yeah, I'm not going to question God on his timing there, right? It's in his hands. It's in his hands. Hagiophilo, the Logos Spanish Pubbler, has a systematic and Ooh, that sounds like a nice book. Systematic and expository biblical theology in Spanish. When can we get that one in English? Hagiophilo. That sounds like a nice book. Very cool. Okay. I like it. I like it. And let's see. Bruce, deconverting made me realize I have no choice over my beliefs because I tried so hard to not let it go, and yet there was no getting back on the boat once I left the shore. That's very interesting to me. I think I agree and I disagree, Bruce. Man, what an interesting comment. Deconverting made me realize I have no choice over my beliefs because I tried so hard to not let it go, and yet there was no getting back on the boat once it left the shore. It's funny because when I started reading the Bible, I feel similarly in some ways. I started reading the Bible and it just made sense. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a grand effort of, spiritual, I don't know, acumen that caused me to believe. Once I read the Bible, I was just like, oh, it makes sense. I believe. So I hear you, right? It's almost like the faith was given to me. But then as I've dug deeper, it's like reinforced and reaffirmed it, if that makes sense. And so now I feel like it can weather the storm. So I agree and disagree. I think, you know what? I think you can have a choice over your beliefs, but it's a roundabout choice, if that makes sense. I don't think we have direct influence over our beliefs. Yeah, I think I much more land on this stance. Tell me what you think about this, Bruce. I'm curious. I think we don't have direct influence over our beliefs, but we have like an indirect influence over our beliefs, if that makes sense. There's a book I really like called You Are What You Love by James K.A. Smith. I think you would actually like this book, Bruce. It's obviously a Christian book, but I think you would actually like it. And one of the things he talks about in here, see, the power of habit. He talks about it's not just like an intellectual thing. Faith is not. You are what you love, the spiritual power of habit. He says it's not like the faith is just an intellectual thing that you grasp with the mind. It's actually something actionable that you live out with your life, and it exists in a reciprocal fashion, right? So you live it out, it causes you to believe, you believe, it causes you to live it out, and you start kind of moving in that direction, right? So, interesting. Bruce, I think we can indoctrinate ourselves, but I don't know if I would describe that as having control over beliefs, but that may be semantics. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But I don't think I'm talking about indoctrination. If you watch my video that I sent you, and I know you'll check it out after the stream's done, if you watch my video, you'll see I talk about indoctrination. And I feel it's something we need to move on from, is indoctrination. So, yeah, I don't know if it's pure semantics, Bruce. Interesting concept here. Very interesting concept. I like what you're sharing. Very thought-provoking. Okay, let's keep going. I now need to figure out, and how much time do we have? We're at over an hour, so I'm going to end here. I'm going to end here on figuring this one thing out. Do I have good reason to believe that the food here, the eating here, is referring to some food other than Judaism? Okay, other than those beliefs. And for this, I need not a study Bible, but we need like a robust exegetical commentary. Okay, so let's try Ellingworth to start. Big Ellingworth fan. And I just need some reason to believe that his reference to foods here is not a Jewish thing. Okay. Bruce, I don't think I could get myself to believe in Santa Claus again without an extreme personal experience with Santa Claus. Yeah, I do think we're talking about something of a different order entirely when we talk about God and Christianity. And yeah, it's very interesting. I understand what you're saying, Bruce. I understand what you're saying. I'd have to think about it more, to be honest. Okay, here we go. Verses 9 to 14 have given rise to a wide variety of interpretations, and a final choice between them cannot be made until the whole passage has been examined. The basic problem arises because the writer refers elusively to a situation which was well known to the first readers, but of which modern readers are largely ignorant. And he's talking about the eating thing, right? The exegete's guiding principle, as always, must be to consider first evidence from the epistle itself, and secondarily what must be known in the broader background. Further problem may be the author's tendency, especially but not only in this passage, to move quickly from one aspect of the theme to another. So that was the case I was making, that he's referring to one aspect, one type of eating of foods, and then he moves on to referencing Judaism. Does verse 9 connect to the other four verses, or does it not? That's the real question. Like in a direct fashion, right? Oh yeah, I'm not trying to equate the two, just an example of belief that I can't change even if I desired to. I agree with that. But I don't think that's the whole story, right? Like, okay. Because I hear you. There have been situations where I thought to myself, wouldn't that be nice to believe that? But I just don't, right? I just don't believe it. Wouldn't it be nice, though, if I could believe it, or if that made sense or something like that? So I know what you mean on maybe something that's of less consequence. But then what would I do? Wouldn't it be nice if that were the case? Because there are also plenty of times in my life where I didn't believe a thing, and then after further examination, research, and inquiry, I began to believe it. But it wasn't a direct thing. I wasn't even trying to convince myself. I just dug deeper and my mindset changed. You see what I mean? So what I would encourage you to do, I think, I wouldn't even try to believe or not believe. I wouldn't try to do anything like that. I would just try to dig, right? If you just dig, then belief will or will not come depending upon the evidence that presents itself and how compelling you find that to be and how robust and, how robust and open-minded your perspective, right? So I don't even know I hear what you're saying, Bruce, and that's where I say it's indirect. It's not like a direct thing, like I would like to believe this, so I'm going to try to believe it. And in fact, that's why you found yourself leaving, because you were like, I want to believe this, but I can't. Deductive reasoning. Right, Cal Magic. Instead, I would just encourage you to examine. And then the belief will come if it's compelling, right? Oh, I see. I hear what you're saying, Bruce. You're going to want to watch my video because my video actually talks about this, right? Faith, I do not think faith is believing something in absence of evidence. I don't think that's what faith is. I think faith is very, very different from that, actually. And it sounds like that was your version of faith, is you were believing in absence of evidence, and then with the change in evidence, you couldn't believe anymore. And so I hear you. I would encourage all Christians to move on from a belief like that, actually, if they're capable of it. Not all Christians are. There's some beauty in a simple faith, but I believe God is calling each of us to a higher calling in a greater, more robust faith that is much more deliberate and less received, if that makes sense, in the passive sense. Looking for a more active faith. Yeah, very interesting, Bruce. I think I'm in agreement with that. Okay, let's continue with Ellingworth. Faith is the hope of a certain reality. Okay, and that's in line with Hebrews, right? How would you define faith if not the belief in absence of evidence? I preached on this. I can hardly remember what I preached, though. I preached on Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So I have a sermon on YouTube on that topic. I haven't stopped and considered it. Faith. This is one of those sticky words in Christianity. How would I define faith? Faith for me, it could be the case or it couldn't be the case. And I wish I had my book here. So Ian McGilchrist wrote a book. Wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. And I would read this passage to you, but I lent the book out, so I don't have the book currently here with me. In the book, in the preface, he talks about how you would prove or disprove a particular theory. And he talks about this theory, proving or disproving this particular theory. He talks about it as having to do it as in an indirect fashion, right? And he says something like this. He says, his theory, and it's about hemispheric lateralization in the brain. He says his theory is not something that can be proved or disproved in a direct fashion. Instead, it has to be indirect. And the indirect fashion in which it is proved or disproved is, he basically says, does this theory present a more or less cohesive way of viewing and interpreting the world? A way of interpreting and viewing the world that makes sense of all of the data, makes sense of all of the facts, right? So for me, for Christianity, when I look at the world in which I exist, I look at everything around me and I consider it's as though I have multiple pairs of glasses through which I could look at the world, right? And they all sit here on the table. I have my Christian glasses and my Mormon glasses and my atheist glasses and my agnostic glasses and my Muslim glasses and my Hindu glasses, etc. I have all these glasses on the table, and I look at the world around me. And I look at the world with no glasses, and I say, that's kind of blurry. It's kind of fuzzy. I can't see clearly. And then I pick up my Buddhist glasses, and I go, that makes things a little bit more clear. And then I put down my Buddhist glasses, and I pick up my atheist glasses, and I see, that's a little less clear or a little more clear, whatever. When I view the world this way, when I pick up my Christian glasses, they make the world shine the clearest. The reality in which I live, in which I exist, makes the most sense to me with the Christian glasses on. Or think of it this way. I have a map, okay? A map isn't the thing in and of itself, right? I'm going to go on a hike, and I have a map. But I have like 20 or 30 different maps in front of me. Here's a map, here's a map, here's a map. I'm going on a hike, and all of them kind of show a different path or a different way. Well, as I start to make it down that path, one of these maps is going to be more or less accurate than the others. And I'm going to find myself returning to that map over and over and over again, right? So I'm experiencing reality each day. I'm experiencing all of the things that human beings go through every single day. And I constantly pull out my map and I say, how does my experience make sense in light of this map? And then I put that map aside and I try a different one. How does my experience make sense in light of this map? And I put that map aside and I try a different one. How does my experience make sense in light of this map? And I find over and over again, whenever I pull out the Christian map, it makes the most sense of my experience. It makes the most sense of my life. So to me, that is my rough epistemology, if you will. My epistemology is more scientific and inductive than anything else. I know that's not common for Christians. I know a lot of Christians are much more deductive, top down with their epistemology, but I'm more or less inductive in my approach. And I find that it works well for me. What's up, Angie? Good to see you. Welcome. So that's how I would say I approach reality itself epistemologically. Now, there's a reason I said all that. You asked me to define faith. When it comes to faith, I may have all of the maps, and yet I know there are maps missing that I don't have, and even the map that makes the most sense for me, the Christian map, it's not perfect. I don't have perfect clarity with the Christian map either, but it's the best one I've got, if that makes sense. And so to me, that's where faith comes into play. See, it's not absence of evidence. I have all the evidence before me. And in fact, I've selected the map or the pair of glasses that works the best. But there's still an element of faith there because I don't exactly know, right? This map makes the most sense of my reality, but there's still a path or two on it where I'm not sure about it. And then not only that, but there are other maps I don't know about. I may have 30 maps. There are 100 maps in the universe. There are 70 maps I don't even know about. And so with those two caveats, to me, that's where faith comes into play. Faith comes into play and says, okay, this is the best map you got. Use it, but hold on to it loosely, if that makes sense. Hold on to it tentatively, recognizing there are other maps you don't have, and your current map may have holes or flaws in it, right? And that's where dogma needs to bow the knee to, I don't know, reality. So that's my best guess. I don't know. What do you think about that, Bruce? What do you think about that? Poncho says, I was lost in the world after my combat tour. I was broken in every sense. I was at the point I finally just asked God what he wanted me to do. It is the only reason I moved to Mexico. Faith. See, there you go. And it's intuitive. It's compelling, right? Like you almost don't know. You almost don't know. All right. Let's see. Bruce says, I also want to acknowledge I am not a seeker. I don't want you to feel like I'm just leading you on. I just find these conversations interesting. Yeah, you're asking good questions and causing me to think through my approach, right? Wouldn't the missing map be a lack of evidence, though? And then you use faith to fill that gap. Yeah, but we're human beings. You're never going to have all the evidence. You're never going to have all the information. You've got to live your life with incomplete information at some point. All people do, right? All human beings have to live their lives with incomplete information at some point. And all you can do is the best you can do with what you got available to you. But I will tell you this, I'm in a relentless pursuit for as many maps as I can possibly collect, right? So I study other religions and other faiths. I try to understand philosophically why people believe what they do. I try to understand rationally. I try to understand emotionally where people are coming from, because I don't have all the maps, but neither does anyone else. Nobody else has all the maps. And so I can just make the best do with what I've got available to me. And at that point, it's between God and I, right? Like he knows whether or not I'm truly giving it the best effort I've got in terms of my examination, my prayerful consideration, all that type of stuff. Yep. All right. Poncho says, I had to be broken in order to become whole through just one thing, faith. I feel that, Poncho. That's fantastic. Praise God. What a testimony. Cal Magic, all fall short, so we hold on to our beliefs with humility. I love that. I love that. Bruce says, I agree, but it sounds like you're affirming my point about faith, but saying we disagree. I mean, if that's your, to me, that's not believing in though you lack evidence. Like, I don't lead with belief. I showed you are what you love for a reason, right? Like that book's about action, right? That book is about living and taking action. I'm much more pragmatic, right? When it comes to my faith. Which faith works, if that makes sense, right? The faith that works is likely to be true. I may say I have to fix a car, and I've never fixed a car. This is actually an accurate description thus far. And I have a bunch of tools laying out in front of me, and somebody told me, hey, one of those tools will fix it. Like, I'm going to be just guessing for a while there, but eventually I'm going to come across a tool that more or less works. Well, you better believe I'm going to stick with that tool, right? Because it works. I don't know nothing about cars. I don't know nothing about tools, but I know this tool seems to work. So I'm just going to stick with that one. You know what I mean? I'll continue to maybe try the other tools out in the toolbox from time to time. But I'm going to go back to Old Faithful, right? My trusty tool. We have evidence that men and water exist, but the ability is not evidential and needs faith to believe. So okay, I'm sorry, I skipped one. This is not a combative question, but it may sound like that. But what evidence do you have that a man can walk on water? We have evidence that man and water exist, but the ability is not evidential and needs faith to believe. No. I'm just much more humble about what we know about that. I don't think we know very much about men or water. Right? I don't think we know much about that stuff. I'm much more skeptical of standard accepted scientific materialistic worldview, if that makes sense. Right? So I question that to begin with. Call me a radical skeptic. What evidence do you have? It sounds like you're from. What evidence do you have that a man can walk on water? If I said I know a guy who can walk on water, would you believe it? Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like these arguments, I'm being honest here, Bruce. These things are not compelling to me. This is, this goes back to what we talked about initially, where I said my hangups with Christianity weren't so much intellectual, and to me, it's intellectual to you, right? Like you say, you have a very basic logical structure, a syllogism that's laid out here, right? In normal experience, men don't walk on water. The Bible says that a man walked on water. What's more likely, that a man walked on water, or that the Bible is utilizing this as a myth? Therefore, I don't believe the Bible, right? But I take issue with half those premises, right? Like, I take issue with the fact that there's a literalistic interpretation of the biblical passage there. I take issue with the fact that we're placing material reality above spiritual realities. I take issue with the fact that we think we know much about the material realm itself, right? Like, honestly, I don't know how to put it, but when you say something like, what evidence do you have that a man can walk on water? Honestly, my gut reaction is, what evidence do you have that a man can't walk on water, right? Like, and I know that seems self-evident to you, but it doesn't at all seem self-evident to me. You know what I mean? And, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm not being combative either. It's just like, that's not compelling to me. You know what I mean? I just don't find that compelling. And I understand how you get there. I understand how you say, yeah, but in the normal course of things, I've never seen a man walk on water, and it never happens. We never hear of accounts of this. Like, I understand all of the reasoning that would go behind that, all of the evidence that one would have to support that sort of assumption. But like, there are so many things I haven't seen. There are so many things I don't know. There's so much that I'm ignorant of, right? Like, I have very little evidence, period, about anything. If you take everything there is to know about men and water, I know 0.00001% of all of it, right? For all I know, there's a whole tribe of people in Ghana who routinely walk on water. I don't know. I don't know nothing, right? So for me to come out with my 0.00001% limited experience with reality and then set that as the definitive standard by which all other standards will be measured, I just don't find that compelling, right? So that's just not how I think about the world. So if it's a hang-up for you, I get it, right? Like, I understand how that might be a hang-up for you. But, like, I just think we know so little about reality that, yeah, I don't find arguments like that compelling, right? I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I'm being clear or not. I'm trying to be clear. Let's see. I just want to be clear, I'm not trying to argue against Christianity, but to show my reasoning of why I think faith is in lack of evidence for belief. Yeah, I understand. But I just think, I'll show you one little passage that made a big difference for me. And I'm going to end here, folks. I'm going to end here. This is C.S. Lewis. And this is Mere Christianity. This made a big difference for me, okay? Ah, yes. So, here you go, Bruce. This is in Mere Christianity, Book 2, What Christians Believe, the Practical Conclusion. And I found this argument very compelling, okay? I found this argument very, very compelling. I cannot myself see why these things should be the conductors of the new kind of life. But then, if one did not happen to know, I should never have seen any connection between particular physical pleasure and the appearance of a new human being in the world. Okay, he's talking about procreation. He goes on further. Here we go. Right, he's talking about authority. He's talking about believing things on authority. He says, in other words, I believe it on his authority. Do not be scared by the word authority. Believing things on authority only means believing them because you have been told them by someone you think trustworthy. I think this is where your concept of faith comes into play, Bruce. Okay? So he says, look, I believe something based on authority. And he said, and you might have a gut reaction that says, that's right, we shouldn't believe anything on authority. Hold on a second. Listen to what C.S. Lewis says. 99% of the things you believe are believed on authority. I believe there is such a place as New York. I have not seen it myself. I could not prove by abstract reasoning that there must be such a place. I believe it because reliable people have told me so. The ordinary man believes in the solar system, atoms, evolution, and the circulation of the blood on authority, because the scientists say so. Every historical statement in the world is believed on authority. None of us have seen the Norman conquest or the defeat of the Armada. None of us could prove them by pure logic as you prove a thing in mathematics. We believe them simply because people who did see them have left writings that tell us about them. In fact, on authority. A man who jibbed at authority in other things, as some people do in religion, would have to be content to know nothing all his life. End quote. I find this argument very compelling, right? I've been using that word this entire discussion. Your potential defeaters to Christianity, I told you I just don't find them compelling because I don't resonate with them, right? I find this argument very compelling. I resonate with Lewis on this point. There is so much in the world that I don't know, and I've got no clue about, and the relationship between men and water and can they walk on it is one of those things, right? And so, man, okay. So you asked me, if I said I know a guy who can walk on water, would you believe it? I'd be skeptical, but I absolutely wouldn't rule it out, right? I'd be like, wow, that sounds pretty wild. Okay, let's check it out. There you go. That's it. Sure, I think this is all fair if you see the Bible as an authority. See, in the way you're describing it, I don't, though, right? And I get around that with my description of maps and glasses earlier, right? A lot of Christians do this. They say, hey, the Bible's the only authority. You can take it to the bank, and that's it. But, like, I use an inductive epistemology that doesn't start deductively with the Bible. I've already shared that. So like, I don't feel like I fall into the trap that you're describing here. This is all fair if you see the Bible as an authority, but I find when people try to explain why the Bible is authority, it always seems to be circular reasoning. See, I don't argue circularly. I say, here's a potential worldview. The Bible is right. Okay. And then every time I pull that map out, it works. I know you're not trying to trap me, Bruce. I'm trying to describe to you the way I view the world. And I feel like when... Here's the thing, Bruce. Let me state this. I am not your stereotypical evangelical. I'm just not. Okay? I found that out through repeated interaction and conversation and discussions, online, etc. I'm not a stereotypical evangelical. I understand your remarks if they apply to like a stereotypical evangelical, right? When you say, if you see the Bible as an authority, but when I ask people about the authority of the Bible, they use circular reasoning to try and support it. I know that argument. I've been there, right? I know what that is. And I know the argument out of that too. They say that in the matter of ultimate authorities, everybody is circular, right? So, I don't know if you've heard this before, Bruce, but let's say your epistemology is rationalism, okay? Well, try to prove rationalism as an epistemology without referring to rationalism. You fall into one ditch or another. Either you reason circularly, which you've just charged Christians with doing, or you have to appeal to something other than rationalism to affirm rationalism itself. But if that's the case, then rationalism is not your ultimate authority. You see what I mean? So there's an answer, but I don't answer that way. Why? Because I'm not a traditional evangelical, right? Like I'm not stereotypical in that sense. It just is what it is. So what I told you is I just have different glasses. I have different maps, and I don't personally argue the Bible's the authority because it says the authority. I never make those arguments. Now, we've only been interacting like an hour, so you can be forgiven for believing that I would support standard traditional evangelical arguments, but I don't. There are answers for that, but those are their answers. They're not my answers. My answer is I have a map called Christianity. I have a map called The Bible is True, and every time I use it, it's really accurate. There you go, right? Bruce says, I'm not trying to trap you. You said I'm not going to fall into this trap or something along those lines. Okay, fair enough. All I meant was I do not defend my Christianity the way most Christians defend it. Does that make sense? So I might have said I'm not going to fall into this trap, but all I meant was the reason I believe Christianity is not the reason most people believe Christianity. Okay. Hard solipsism has no solve either. I agree. I don't know what hard solipsism is. Let me look it up. Hard solipsism. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known. Yeah, but you can apply the same approach to not just rationalism, but to, scientific reasoning as well. What's a scientific epistemology called? It's inductive, but I forget what it's called. But I think you can apply it to the same thing. But you might be saying it doesn't matter what you call it. It amounts to the same thing. And in which case I agree, I suppose. Hard solipsism is like brain in a vat type stuff. No, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think you can apply the same... The point is that whenever we're dealing with ultimate authorities in philosophy, they of necessity have to be self-proving, right? So, and the way Christian apologists talk about this is they talk about narrow circularity versus broad circularity, okay? So, sure, the Bible proves the Bible is narrowly circular, but when it comes to all ultimate authorities, they all have to be self-proving because otherwise they're not your ultimate authority. So whether it be a solipsistic brain in a vat perspective, or a scientific approach. You have to appeal to science in order to prove science. You have to appeal, like, whenever you get to ultimate authorities in epistemology, they always have to be circular. But the question is, are they broadly circular or narrowly circular? So I understand that approach. Again, it's not how I take it, because my epistemology is not deductive. It's not top down. It's just not how I view the world. Most Christians' epistemology is, right? I know what I know about the world because Bible. How do you know the Bible? Because Bible, right? I get that. But I just don't view the world that way. Like, Bible is my map, and every time I use it, it works. But notice that that's a very pragmatic and inductive epistemology. It's not deductive. Bruce says, I agree with you to an extent, but the differences would take too long to sparse out. No, hey, no problem. I've enjoyed our conversation very much. You've given me some food for thought. And again, it's tough because I do not represent like a traditional evangelical. I just don't. So as individuals discussing with each other is very interesting, right? But I'm not going to be representative of most Christians. So I think even if you get to the point where like you like my approach or something like that, it's still not traditional evangelicalism, right? So I don't know. Very interesting. What an interesting conversation. All right, guys, I went way longer than I expected to. Hour and a half. It was good. I really enjoyed this. Off stream, I'm going to have to figure out if I need to treat verse 9 by itself or I can do 9 to 13. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure that all out. I'll do it off stream. May or may not stream later this week. I don't know. When you get a Monday stream in, it kind of feels good to revisit. All right, so I might come back, I don't know, a Wednesday or something like that, and get another stream in. Don't know for sure, though, okay? Don't count on it. Don't hold me to it. But, yeah, I'm enjoying streaming again, and we're going to start getting some videos going again on YouTube. I just got to get my arms around my classes and get them finished off, okay? Really enjoyed hanging out with everyone today. Tons of interaction on YouTube. I appreciate you all so much. Wow, awesome. Thank you so much. And Poncho, appreciate that support. Thanks for becoming a member. Fantastic. Bruce, really enjoyed our interaction today. Really did. Bruce says, I honestly think there is many individual beliefs of Christianity as there are Christians, so I don't assume you're going to give the normal answers. Hey, fair enough, Bruce, and good. I think that's a thoughtful and wise approach. Hey, cool. You guys are all awesome. Thanks so much for hanging out. Really enjoyed streaming in the chat today. Made some progress on the sermon. Going to continue to do so throughout the week. Got to get some homework done, and we'll be doing that as well. But yeah, we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Almost done. Hoping to be finished with classes by the end of August. My drop dead date is August 26th, so that's my goal. Have a good day. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you so much, Bruce. Appreciate it. Cloudsies, sorry I didn't interact, but I was here. No problem, Cloudsies. I appreciate you. All right. You guys are amazing. Take care. God bless. Bye.